If you run a small business and you trust someone with access to your accounts, listen to what I'm about to tell you, because I trusted someone with access to my accounts, and I ended up convicted of a fraud that he committed, and I spent 18 months with a criminal record proving it was him. I ran a small electrical contracting business. 8 years old, 6 employees at peak, commercial clients mostly, the kind of work that is unglamorous and essential and that keeps the lights on in buildings that other people make profitable. I was not running a sophisticated operation. I was running a van-based business with a cloud accounting system and a part-time bookkeeper named Gary, who I had hired 4 years earlier because I was good at electrical work and terrible at invoices, and the combination of those two things was making my life unnecessarily complicated. Gary handled invoicing, supplier payments, and basic accounts reconciliation. He had access to the accounting system. He had access to the client portal. He had the login credentials because he needed them to do the job, and I gave them to him because that is what you do when you hire someone and you trust them. I want you to understand what trusting Gary looked like in practice, because I think it matters. Gary was 51 years old. He had 2 grandchildren he talked about constantly. He brought me coffee from the bakery near his house on the mornings he came into work. He laughed at his own jokes, which were mostly terrible, and he was reliable in the specific low-drama way of someone who shows up on time and does what they said they would do and does not complicate your life. I liked Gary. I had no reason not to like Gary. The reasons came later in a police interview room in March 2022. The investigation began when HMRC flagged inconsistencies between my submitted accounts and the invoice records they held from clients. 3 clients had submitted invoices for payment that did not match the amounts recorded in my accounting system. The discrepancies were specific and significant, invoices inflated by between £800 and £3,000 each, with the additional amounts not appearing in my business account but disappearing into a pattern of cash transactions that HMRC and the investigating officers described as structured. I had not structured anything. I had not inflated anything. I had not known anything was wrong until the officers arrived. Let me stop here. 2 minutes in. I need to tell you something about the experience of being interviewed under caution for a fraud you did not commit, because it has a specific quality that I think is important to understand. The officers were professional. They were not hostile. They showed me the invoices, printed on my letterhead, carrying my business details, formatted in my template, and asked me to explain the discrepancies. I said I could not explain them because I had not created them. They noted my response. They charged me 3 weeks later. My trial solicitor was a competent man who did his best with the evidence available. The evidence available was Gary's testimony, the invoices, and the accounting records. Gary told the court that he had flagged concerns about the accounting to me on 2 occasions, and that I had told him not to worry about it. He said I had instructed him to process the inflated invoices. He said he had done so under instruction, and that he had been frightened to refuse. He gave this evidence in the measured, regretful tone of a man who has been coached to sound reluctant. The jury convicted me in November 2022. I was given a suspended sentence and ordered to pay compensation of £47,000, the total value of the fraudulent invoices. Gary walked out of court and did not look at me. My new solicitor is a woman called Rachel. I instructed her in January 2023 after my original representation had exhausted its avenues, and after a contact at a business network told me Rachel had a reputation for finding things in digital evidence that other people had missed. Rachel asked me one question in our first meeting. Had I ever given Gary his own login credentials, or had he been using mine? I said I had created a secondary access account for him with limited permissions and his own login. Rachel said, I need the server logs. The accounting software I used maintained server logs, automated records of every login event, every file access, every modification to any document in the system, time-stamped and associated with the specific user account that initiated the action. These logs had been obtained by the police as part of their investigation. They had been reviewed. They had been included in the prosecution's disclosure bundle. My original solicitor had received them. They had not been examined in sufficient detail. Rachel examined them in sufficient detail. Every altered invoice had been accessed from the same IP address. Not my IP address. Not the IP address associated with my home or my office or any device I owned. An IP address that, when Rachel submitted an information request to the internet service provider, was registered to a domestic account in Gary's name, at Gary's home address. The alterations to the invoices had been made from Gary's home, from Gary's internet connection, logged under Gary's user account, during hours when, as Rachel established from my own business records, Gary was working remotely. The prosecution had this information. The server logs were in their possession bundle. The IP address was in the logs. Nobody had run the search. Rachel filed the appeal application in May 2023. She also filed a formal complaint about the disclosure failure, the failure of the prosecution to identify and act on evidence that was in their own bundle and that was directly exculpatory. The prosecution declined to settle. Their position was that the server logs had been disclosed and that it was not their responsibility to draw the defence's attention to specific entries. Rachel described this position, in correspondence, as extraordinary. The appeal is listed for February. I want to give Gary something here, not because he deserves it, but because understanding him is the only thing that made this survivable. Gary had debts I did not know about. He had a second family I did not know about. He had built a version of his life on resources he did not have, and when the gap between what he had and what he needed became unsustainable, he had found a way to close it that involved my accounts and my reputation and my conviction. He did not, I think, fully anticipate the sentence. I think he expected the money and a resolution and a version of events that would hold. He was wrong about the version of events holding. He was wrong because he accessed the accounting system from his own IP address, which is the kind of mistake that looks obvious in retrospect, and was not obvious to him at the time because he believed nobody would look. Rachel looked. The appeal is listed for February. The server log is the centerpiece of our submission. The IP address evidence is, Rachel says, as clean as this kind of evidence gets. Time-stamped, corroborated, logged by a third-party system with no involvement from either party to the dispute. I do not yet know the outcome. What I know is that the truth exists in a server log that has been in the prosecution's possession since March 2022, and that the question of why it was not identified is one I intend to ask every person with the authority to answer it. Justice served via the legal system, and that is what I am working toward. That is what the log should deliver. What would you have done if you had been convicted on evidence that pointed at someone who was in the courtroom watching you receive the verdict? I hired Rachel. I kept asking questions. I will keep asking until February, and I will tell you what happens.